My name is Emma, and this is the story of how I lost everything, and then found something far more powerful. It started the day after my husband, Luke, died. I stood on our front porch, grief washing over me in thick, numbing waves. In one hand, an overnight bag. In the other, a wilted bouquet from the hospital. My eyes were swollen from crying, my hair a wreck after 2 sleepless nights curled up in a hospital chair. Luke had fought for hours after a sudden heart attack. He was just 36. I reached into my bag for the house key, hands trembling as I slipped it into the lock, but it wouldn't turn. I frowned, tried again, still nothing. I wiped my sweaty palms on my jeans and tried the spare. Same result. A spike of panic cut through the grief. I knew this lock. I'd opened it every day for 4 years. And now? It was like I didn't live there anymore. Then I saw it. Through the living room window, boxes, a suitcase, pink velvet cushions that weren't mine. I pressed my face to the glass. Karen, Luke's mother, was inside. So was his sister, Stephanie. They were laughing, sipping tea from my favorite mugs, like they belonged there. I knocked. No answer. I knocked louder. Finally, the door creaked open. Karen stood there, arms folded, lips curved in a smug little smile. "Emma," she said, tilting her head, "didn't expect you so soon." "What's going on?" I stepped forward. "Why can't I get in? Why are you here?" Karen didn't move. She leaned casually against the doorframe like this was just an annoying hiccup in her afternoon. "Because you don't live here anymore," she said smoothly. "Luke paid for this house, and now that he's gone, it belongs to his family. You can leave." I blinked at her, sure I'd misheard. I'm his wife," I stammered. "We bought this house together." Karen let out a sharp little laugh. "Oh, please. You married him with no prenup, no job, no kids. You contributed nothing. Luke paid the mortgage. Everything in this house was his, and now that he's gone, it reverts to us. You don't belong here anymore." Her voice was sweet, cheerful even. My blood turned to ice. Then Stephanie appeared, behind her, holding a stack of my kitchen plates. "You left the door unlocked at the hospital," she said with a smirk. "So, we just moved in. Thought you wouldn't mind." Something in me cracked. I started to laugh, a wild, disbelieving laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep. Karen narrowed her eyes. "What's so funny?" I wiped a tear from my cheek. "I wasn't your story right here, Emma, not with anger, but with precision. We don't meet her in the mud. We rise above it and bury her in facts, in law, in everything Luke gave you to protect what you built together." Angela paused, letting her words sink in. "Let me handle the legal. You keep the house standing." I hung up, the silence in the house settling like dust again. But this time it didn't suffocate me, it sharpened me. The next morning I woke up with purpose. I made coffee, black, no cinnamon, and sat in Luke's chair. I opened a fresh notebook and started documenting everything. Every memory, every note he left, every bill in both our names, every photo that put us together in time and space. If she wanted to argue my place in Luke's life, I'd drown her in the evidence of it. Later, I returned to the camera cards. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until I found it. A clip, shaky and off-center, but unmistakably Luke. He was sitting in the yard talking to the camera like he'd meant to edit it into something later. His voice, warm and familiar, filled the room. "If anything ever happens to me," he said with a small smile, "Emma gets everything. I know Mom won't like it, but she never liked anything that wasn't hers to control." I stopped the video and stared at the screen, heart pounding. I had no idea when he'd recorded it. Maybe he knew Karen better than even I had realized. I sent the clip to Angela, and for the first time since this all began, I knew I'd already won. Want to keep going with this story? or explore a different moment. Maybe the court hearing, a flashback to the day of the wedding, or something else. Keep quiet. Don't lash out. Let me handle the court, Angela said at 13:27. I hung up at 13:30 and sat in the dark, gripping that letter like it might bite. 2 days later came another surprise, not in an envelope, but as a text from James, Luke's old business partner. Hey, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but Karen called. She said you pressured Luke to transfer the house. I don't believe it, but she's asking for emails, medical records, anything to prove he wasn't mentally fit. I stared at my phone, stunned. I hadn't spoken to James in over a year, not since Luke left the company after his heart problems began. He and James had parted on neutral terms, but now Karen was pulling everyone into her web, desperate for anything to twist. Did you tell her anything? I asked. The typing bubbles appeared. No. But Emma might have said something about Luke's last investor meeting, that he seemed confused, forgetful. Karen's building a case. A knot in my chest turned to dread. I knew exactly what Karen meant. Just a few months before he died, Luke came home from a client meeting pale and shaken. He couldn't remember where he'd parked or even the name of the client he had just met. He blamed stress, said he hadn't slept. But what if it wasn't just stress? What if Karen had proof? I ran to his office, tearing through drawers and files until I found it. An unopened letter from St. Michael's Neurology. Dear Mr. Walker, following your recent cognitive assessment, we are pleased to inform you that your results fall within the normal range. No signs of early cognitive decline were detected. I nearly sobbed with relief. He was okay. And now I had proof. Karen had declared war. I was ready to fight. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and still, like the sky itself was holding its breath. I stood at the courthouse in a black dress and flats, clutching my bag like armor. Inside it, the deed, the post-nup, Luke's neurology letter, and just enough rage to keep me standing. Angela met me at the steps. Ready? She asked softly. She's going to lie, isn't she? Angela gave a tight smile. Oh, absolutely. But lies don't last long in court. Inside, Karen was already seated in the front row, draped in black lace, a tissue clutched in her hand like a stage prop. Beside her sat Stephanie, eyes cast down like the loyal daughter in mourning. Neither looked at me. I didn't care. I wasn't there for them. I was there for Luke. The hearing was short. Angela presented the notarized post-nup, the deed, and the medical letter. When Karen's lawyer tried to argue Luke had been coerced, Angela asked a single question. Do you have any documentation to support that? He didn't. The judge looked irritated. I see no grounds to dispute the legality of the property transfer, he said. This house legally belongs to Mrs. Emma Walker. Case dismissed. Just like that, it was over, or so I thought. Outside the courthouse, Karen followed me. You may have won the house, she hissed, the mask of grief slipping. But you can't erase me. I'm his mother. I didn't erase you, I said, not even turning. You did that yourself. She stopped. What's that supposed to mean? I turned slowly. Luke's funeral is tomorrow. You're not invited. Her face twisted. You can't keep me from my own son's funeral. I already did, I said. Your name's off the guest list. If you show up, they'll escort you out. You vindictive little... No, I cut in, voice low and calm. You don't get to call me anything. Not after you tried to steal my home, not after the lies you told, and definitely not after you tried to turn his death into a power play. She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. Luke wouldn't want you there, and you know it. I walked away before she could respond, but that night I didn't sleep. Not out of guilt, but out of fear. Because Karen didn't lose quietly. The morning of the funeral hit like a tidal wave, sudden and cold. By 10 a.m., people were already arriving at the chapel. Old friends, colleagues, distant relatives, they brought warm hands and kind words. "He always talked about you," one woman said. "Said you were the best thing that ever happened to him." I nodded, throat tight. "Thank you." At 11:45, every seat was filled, except two. Karen and Stephanie sat in the back row, dressed like mourning royalty, eyes forward, faces stiff. Angela touched my arm. "Do you want me to handle it?" "No," I said. "I'll do it." I walked down the aisle. The room went quiet. "You're not supposed to be here," I whispered. "I'm not leaving," Karen said. "Then I will," I said. "I'll take the minister. We'll do the funeral in a park, the backyard. I don't care, but I won't let you sit here and pretend you cared when all you want is what you didn't get." Karen stood, but Stephanie grabbed her arm. "Mom," she whispered, "let's go." Karen looked stunned. Stephanie didn't meet her eyes. She stood, and after a moment, Karen followed, seething. The door clicked shut behind them. The minister began, and I said goodbye to Luke, surrounded by people who actually knew what love was. The house wasn't peaceful after the funeral, just quiet, watchful. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in black, staring at the empty space where Luke used to sleep. I swore I could still smell him, on the pillow. For a moment, it felt like he might walk in, coffee in hand, humming that ridiculous made-up song. But he wouldn't. He was gone. And all that remained was his legacy, and the mess his mother tried to leave behind. I didn't think it was truly over. People like Karen didn't walk away. They circled back. So when I saw her car parked across the street the next morning, engine off, cigarette in hand, I wasn't surprised. I just stepped onto the porch with my coffee and stared. She flicked the cigarette and drove away. She never showed up again. Weeks passed. I cleared out Luke's office drawer by drawer, his watch, old business cards, a photo of us at the lake before everything got complicated. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was fuel. Karen had tried to take everything, my home, my name, my right to mourn. She thought I'd collapse, but I started digging, literally. In the backyard where Luke had always wanted a garden, he'd talked about it often, over seed catalogs and compost videos. I always said, maybe next season. This was the season. Every morning before work, I pulled weeds, turned soil, planted vegetables and wildflowers. I worked in silence, letting the earth calm me. Life began to peek through. Green shoots, soft petals, promises. One morning, I found an envelope under the welcome mat. No return address. Inside, 6 bold words. "This house will always be mine." I laughed, not bitter, but clear. Karen had no power left, no voice, no presence, just 6 meaningless words. I walked into the garden, pressed the letter into the soil beneath the marigolds, and smiled. Luke would have appreciated the symbolism. Months passed. The house stopped feeling haunted. I painted the guest room, changed the curtains, planted herbs in the kitchen window. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was reclaiming. One evening, early spring, I stood in the garden, the sky glowing pink above me. And I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for her, not for pain. I was living. And that was the greatest revenge of all.